Brothers and sisters in Christ, today we had readings both for the Sunday and for the Sunday after the cross. And in both Gospels, the Lord gave a commandment to come follow me. In one Gospel, we are told, take up the cross. Take up your cross daily and follow me. And in the second, if you would be perfect, go sell all that you have and come follow me, and you will have treasure in heaven. The first one was a general commandment. The second was to the young rich man, if you would be perfect, come and follow me. But we should not necessarily think that these two are separate from each other, but they are actually part of one another, perhaps ends of a spectrum. Because to take up our cross and follow Christ is at the same time to be willing to let go of everything else. Possessions, prestige, positions, privileges, whatever it is that we hold fast to and attach ourselves to in this life. That's why in the first gospel it also says, well, what value is it to you if you gain the whole world but you lose your soul? What will you give in exchange for your soul? To follow Christ is to take up the cross daily. Now here's a couple reflections on this. The first is that it is to take up your cross and for you to follow Christ. This is an easy one to forget because a lot of times we feel that it is our responsibility to do what? To take up somebody else's cross, to do the work for somebody else, to solve somebody else's problems, to make sure that they're doing the right thing, and to worry and to obsess and to involve ourselves and to do whatever we have to do to get involved in that person's life and set them on the right path. And sometimes we have a calling to help others, that's true. And the Bible does says, bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ in Galatians. But we should be very careful about what we understand. There's a phrase that's been around for a long time, worry about your side of the street. They have theirs, when we're in a relationship with people, we are called to bear their burdens with them, to rejoice with them when they rejoice, to weep with them when they weep, to comfort them when they're in affliction, of course. But it's a lot different than saying, I'm responsible for their choices and the outcomes of their life and everything that they do. How many parents want to just get right in there for their kids and try to direct everything that the children do so that the children's life will turn out a certain way? Even when the children are no longer children, even when they're adults, even when they're married and they have their own children, the parents still want to come in and, oh, you should do this, you should do that, do this, do that. And they wonder why their children don't want to see them that often. Nobody likes that, right? In our marriages, we can do the same thing. Honey, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why can't you be more like this? Whoa! Do you love me or do you love the idea that you want me to do? We can't do that. Even if we see somebody who's struggling terribly and mightily and failing in their struggle, maybe we know somebody who's got problems in their life and their life is just not working out right, and they make continuously bad decisions and they can't be trusted to do the right thing. We still can't assume that it is our job to take up their cross and follow Christ for them and drag them along kicking and screaming. It doesn't work. We have to entrust them to Christ. We have to entrust their life and the care of their life over to the same good God who is taking care of us. St. Paul recognized this. You heard in the epistle, he talks about the life of preaching. He probably felt an immense responsibility for the souls of the people he was preaching to, no doubt. He was a great apostle. How many people directly came to Christ through him? And in the end, all of us through the ages. But even then, he doesn't take the credit for himself. He says, I did this. It wasn't me, but who? It was the grace of God working with me. It was Christ who now lives in me. It wasn't my cross. It wasn't my strength. It wasn't me doing the work. I just carried my own cross. And in carrying my own cross, people also learn to carry theirs. Mrs. Alim, some of you remember Ileana Alim of blessed memory, one of our parishioners, and I once told her about something that was going on. She said, Father, don't give people advice. She was very wise. She was very wise. People don't want advice, right? Unsolicited. If somebody wants advice from me, I'm happy to give you advice, but only if you ask for it. Because I learned a long time ago that if I start dispensing wisdom and advice to people when they're not ready to hear it or they don't want to hear it, they're just going to just brush me off. What's the point? In the end, I can probably do more harm than good. It's their cross to bear, and they have to come to it in their own time. Another reflection is on this idea of possessions. And I've already hinted at it. The young man is told, you must give up your possessions, give to the poor, and come follow me. And a lot of us nowadays, we don't like the sound of that because, well, we have a lot of possessions. And we would go away sorrowful if we were told that we had to do that. We have houses and cars and stereo systems, computers and smartphones, townhouses, timeshares, whatever it is, all these wonderful things. Mother Benedicta Braga, also of blessed memory, who was the founding abbess of the Dormition Monastery in Michigan, even though she was a nun, you know, nuns even have possessions, so to speak. And in the monastery there in Romania where she was living, when she was first a nun, Varatek, the summer monastery, it's a beautiful place. The nuns do not necessarily all live in one big building in a cenobium part of the convent. A lot of them live in individual little homes. So the monastery itself is like a village, a city. And they have beautiful little homes. And the amazing thing is they build them themselves by hand. So you can imagine the nuns getting up there in the heat of the day and hammering away. And that's how they've done it for generations. And so Mother Benedicta, back in the, whenever it was, maybe the 1960s or 70s, during the communist era, still was very difficult to even be a nun, had finally gotten to that point in her monastic life where she could have her own little house, her skeet, and had built it with her own hands, and did all this work so that she could move in with a couple of the sisters and they would have their own, like, a skeet is like a mini monastery, okay? As part of the whole monastery. There's about 500 nuns or so at the whole monastery. And one night the government came, the communist government came and held a gun to her head and said, get out of this country. I don't care where you go, just get out. Because she preached the gospel, because she was not ashamed of the cross of Christ. And so she said, so I left with a bag and the clothes on my back. Some books, some extra clothes, some extra habits, you know. And she said, well, what was I going to do? I can't take the house with me into heaven. What am I going to do with that? What value is it in the end? Imagine how much of us, we put so much into our homes, or into the places that we live, into all our furnishings and all that. Imagine if somebody came today and said, get out, for the sake of Christ. Would you be ready to just walk away from it? I think, in a way, it would be very liberating. Because the biggest worry and the biggest stress that most of us have is what, right? Our mortgages. There's a massive debt that stands over everything else. So in the end, we don't even possess things anyway, right? We've got the bank's own them, really. Everything we have is on loan. And that's maybe the way we should understand it. We need to be ready to let go of all these things that we care so much about that are not eternal. And follow Christ. And we will have treasure. I think the translation there said, and an income, which I thought was very interesting, which is also true. God will provide us a way of life and a means to make it possible. So we should be ready, brothers and sisters. Who knows what will happen in this country? We've had now a century of prosperity unlike any other century in the history of mankind. I hope you don't take that for granted. Because the reality is, through most of the world, how we live is unprecedented. And throughout the history of the world is unprecedented. And there is no guarantee that it will stay that way. Absolutely not. I don't mean to scare you, but I just want to prepare you. How will you live your life in the future? If you live your life on the foundation of the cross and following Christ, not being so wrapped up in the temporary things of this life, if bad things happen, you will not be taken unawares. You will not be swept away. You will be at peace because you know what matters. And that is what I hope that we all have. So brothers and sisters, let us take up our cross today. And let tomorrow worry about tomorrow. And let yesterday be the past. Today, take up your cross. And every day, say the same thing. Today, God grant me to take up my cross and follow Him.